Get ready for an hour filled with conspiracies, UFOs, ghosts, the paranormal, legends, and myths from around the world. Chasing Prophecy Radio, where the paranormal is supernatural. With your hosts, Shawn Kelly, Jennie Nicassio. Welcome to the Chasing Prophecy Radio, and here are your hosts, Shawn and Jennie.
Good evening from the Keystone State, clear across the USA. Welcome to Chasing Prophecy. We're on 107.1 FM, New Orleans. Anything is beyond the scope of normal tonight with the storms coming through. I'm Jennie Nicassio along with my co-host, Shawn Kelly. Remember to like us on Facebook and Instagram. First, I want to send my well wishes and prayers to New Orleans and anybody impacted by the hurricane. I know it is raining there, and I know that it's raining here, so I hope that we don't get shut off tonight. I think we're going to have a great, cool show tonight, despite all the uneasiness out there. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Shawn, you know I've been reading The Interview with a Vampire, right?
Yes.
Okay. So during our Friday Night Live, I mentioned it, and I learned a lot about Anne Rice, and she's from Louisiana. I didn't know that. So
Yep.
is the author of the Sookie Stackhouse books. Have you ever read any of those?
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh.
Okay. Well, the HBO series True Blood is based on her books, and I have to say it's one of my all-time series. And I think they did Charlene Harris her books well. And you know that New Orleans is so rich with culture and the mystique of vampires. And I am fascinated with them, as you recall me telling you a couple times. So
Yeah.
ever since I was a kid, I love the allure of the dark stranger of the night. How about you?
Yeah, I do. But to me, the best vampires are the old vampires, you know, our movies. Those are
Yes.
the best. You know, I did,
Dracula.
yes, and I did see Interview with a Vampire, and I thought it was too long, okay? I'll be honest with you, I thought it was too long. And then you knew what was going to happen, so I'm not really like a movie buff, but since
Oh, I loved it. I
I've been...
loved it. I loved Louis. He was my favorite character on that.
Oh, I see.
Yes, he was. And there's a history. There's a lot of history surrounding the mansions of New Orleans, and of course voodoo. And what are your thoughts on voodoo?
Do you know, when I saw that question, I was like, wow. You know, I don't condone it. I did read a little bit into it, and if it helps that person out who does voodoo to make their lives a little better, go for it, you know? I mean, I have no problem, but I'd like to share a story with you.
Sure, go right ahead, my dear.
There was a dear friend of mine that went down to New Orleans, and a week before he went to New Orleans, he went to see a doctor, and there was doing, I think he thought they had mesothelioma, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so he had this stuff under his lung, and they asked the doctor, they wanted to go to New Orleans, and the doc said, go for it, you know, why not? So long story short, they were down there at night, him and this other guy,
Mm-hmm.
and this girl out of nowhere came up and gave her a doll, and it had French written all over this doll. It was just a doll.
Okay.
And he held it under his arm. So when they got back to Pittsburgh, they went to the doctors, and they took an x-ray, MRI, and all that stuff was underneath his lung was gone. There was nothing wrong with him. It
Wow.
went away, you know.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, it was. But so to me, if it works, it works, you know. I'm happy with it. You
Oh,
know.
you're happy with it. Okay, explain that.
Explain that. how I'm
Explain that.
happy.
Explain that. You're happy with it.
Hey,
So if you
I'm-
practice voodoo.
so-
No, I'm teasing.
I mean, seriously, think about it, right? You've got all kinds of religions out there, and what's really fascinating about the voodoo religion
Uh-huh.
is that how they deal with saints. You know what I mean? It's Catholicism, plus also a little bit of the other stuff. I don't want to say anything online, fearing that I might offend somebody here, but I think it's a very interesting religion.
Yeah, I think a lot of people experiment with it. I mean, I don't mean a lot of people, like everyday people. I mean, a lot of teenagers do because they have all these gift stores where you can buy, the little tablets or little dolls. I mean, I just seen some voodoo dolls in a gift store not too long ago. It's kind of crazy, but they do, it seems. So I don't know. I
Well,
don't know,
those
Shawn.
stores that you're talking about, when they do sell stuff like that, I really wish they would put a warning label or a warning sign saying, "Don't play with this unless you know what you're doing, or have somebody with you that knows what they're doing," because it can really mess you up.
Oh yeah, I mean, not just yeah. I think sometimes there's that. I'm not sure. There's a voodoo and there's a voodoo. I don't know if that's if it's
Hoodoo.
voodoo. There's voodoo and there's voodoo. So I'm not sure. I think I don't know. Some people say that it doesn't work. It only works if you believe it. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true too. Now, I don't really know too much about hoodoo. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so until I start reading up on it, maybe I'll read up after the show and put it on
Yeah.
our night show.
Did you know that New Orleans is the ultimate horror movie location?
No, I thought
Okay.
Pittsburgh was.
Yeah, well, no. New Orleans is
Uh,
partly because of Interview with a Vampire. I believe Oak Alley Plantation and Madame John's Legacy Cottage, now owned by the Louisiana State Museum, where it was filmed, owns it. Why wouldn't it be though? Think about it. American Horror Story, Coven was filmed there too, and to name a few, there's the Urbana House. The movie, I don't know if any, this is going way back. Movie Hellboy was filmed there. Its premise is about a pregnant woman who becomes possessed and has a devil baby. And then there's the Otis House, the rural Louisiana setting. It's a theme for like what we were just talking about, voodoo. And then the,
mhm.
the one I really liked that I just saw it like a few years ago was The Skeleton Key, and that was starring Kate Hudson, which I really liked that one. I wasn't crazy about the ending though. It's just another movie about voodoo, and also I'm gonna link the list of movies to our Facebook page because it's really interesting, and there's a lot of mansions where they were filmed at, and I think it's really good. You can watch it, this weekend if it rains, and as long as we don't lose power, that is. So
No,
I think it would be a good week, and I know we're supposed to get a lot of rain in the Western Pennsylvania, so I'm sure a lot of the East Coast is going to get a lot of rain. But Shawn, have you ever been on a ghost investigation in New Orleans or Louisiana?
no, no, I haven't. But that's on my wish list.
Yeah, that
Okay,
should be on your wish list.
absolutely. But the places I'd like to go to, couple mansions, the Magnolia Mansion and the Myrtles Plantation.
Oh, I never heard of those ones, but maybe our guests will give us a little
Yeah,
information on it. So this is your deal, Shawn. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce our guest. And you wanted to bring the allure and the mystery of the paranormal capital to the world to our listeners who may not know about the hauntings and the culture. So you found our guest. So I'll go ahead and give it to you, my dear.
thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
Well, hi. Our guest this evening is Eric Wilder. He was born on the Sleepy Bayou of Louisiana. The mystery writer grew up listening to tales of ghosts, magic, and voodoo. He's the author of 13 novels, 4 cookbooks, many short stories. We are going to discuss some of those stories of ghosts, magic, and voodoo. Eric, welcome to Chasing Prophecy. Good to have you with us.
Oh,
Welcome,
thanks
Eric.
so much, Shawn.
Welcome, Eric. I'm so glad you can make it with us tonight. Our show tonight, we're going to discuss the haunted mansions of New Orleans. And for some who've never been there, can you paint a portrait for us? Tell our
Well,
listeners.
the French Quarter is the oldest part of New Orleans, and in my opinion, New Orleans is probably the most haunted place on earth. there's, as you mentioned about Anne Rice and the conversations with a vampire, it took place during the plague years, and which we can relate to now because of COVID-19. But they had yellow fever, malaria, cholera, and thousands of people died. And the many of the people there were Catholics, and they were devoutly Catholic, and they had certain ways that they dealt with the dead. And when the pandemic hit, the yellow fever, they couldn't really bury the bodies like they wanted to. And there's a graveyard there, and I know most people believe or think that all the cemeteries in New Orleans are above ground. Well, that's not exactly true. There's one that has more than 20,000 bodies buried in a common grave with a single headstone. And to say that there's ghosts in New Orleans, I mean, that's an understatement. They're all over.
Wow.
Okay.
The French Quarter, that's over 300 years old, right?
Yes, I think it's 301 this year.
Wow.
What was it like growing up there? And you mentioned that your grandma told you scary stories about voodoo and all kind of stuff, ghosts.
Well, I didn't grow up in New Orleans. I grew up in a little town north of there, and so my first wife was from Chalmette, which is south of New Orleans, and she was like a member of a prominent French Acadian family, and my former father-in-law was a fur buyer. He taught me how to grade pelts, and my mother-in-law was the best Cajun cook that I've ever known. I mean, if you're a connoisseur of gumbo, you know that there's not just a single recipe for gumbo. Everybody has their own particular recipe, and her gumbo was just like, heaven on earth. It was just wonderful. And so, but I spent a lot of time. My Aunt Carmel was, when World War II broke out, she joined the Marines and then graduated from LSU afterward and was a school teacher in New Orleans during the integration years, which was a long time ago. But my brother and I would spend summers with her, and she took us to every museum, every park, and told us every story there was to tell. And I have known lots of people in the area, and I like the detective in my novels. What he doesn't know, he knows who to ask.
It's interesting. Where do you think is the most haunted mansion?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The most haunted mansion in the French Quarter is the Allure mansion.
The Allure?
And that's where, the Allures were a couple, a kind of a rich socialite couple, and they had slaves. It was a 3-story building. It's still there, and in fact, Nicolas Cage owned it for a little while, although he would never spend the night there because it's definitely haunted. And they tortured their slaves, and there's an old French law called Code Noir, which made it illegal to not only to kill your slaves but to torture them. And so the house caught fire one night, and when the people were running out and they were trying to save the people, they found the torture chamber, and it's not open. I mean, there's no museum. You can't go there, but you can walk past it. But it would be a great attraction because it's there's haunted places all over New Orleans, but this one has to be the most haunted.
Did they make a movie, or was there an episode of American Horror Story? Did they do?
Absolutely.
Okay, I thought that sounded. Did they actually? Yeah. Okay, that sounded familiar. And they tortured the slaves. It was horrible. I mean, it was a really scary episode, and they would keep them in these boxes, like torture boxes. It's awful. So
Well, it was.
you think that's one of the scariest, the haunted ones? Did you say
Well,
that
I
they
mean,
closed it, or can you go inside?
no, you can't go inside. It's privately owned, and so there's, it's not a museum or anything, and so it's it, it would be nice if someone, that did own it would open it as a museum or a
Yeah.
boutique hotel or someplace like that. That would be fun.
There must be a reason why they don't have it open to the public. Maybe it is truly haunted.
Maybe
Well, it is.
there.
What was that, Shawn?
Maybe I'll go there to investigate if I could get in.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to contact the landowner.
Bringing you too.
No, I don't think I'm going to that particular place. That's too scary for me. So you think Mardi Gras has a big thing to do with? I mean, it's a big thing in New Orleans because, like you said, the deep Catholic roots. But you know what? It baffles me for a place that's so popular with the paranormal that Lent would be a popular event there. And it just kind of blows my mind. Do you have any comments on that?
But,
Either one of you?
yeah, it's like Shawn said that there's a fine line between Catholicism and voodoo. Voodoo came from West Africa and through the West Indies, and it mixed with the Indians, that were there in the West Indies, and the roots of voodoo. I mean, it's actually called Vodouin.
Vodouin.
Vodoun. That's the actual religion.
I never heard that
and
before.
With that one.
and it's kind of like an animistic religion, but it is, it's it's not a cult. It's a actual religion. But voodoo and hoodoo, as you were talking about, hoodoo is kind of the when you get out in the woods and the away from the city, and the things that people practice become a little more skewed or
Intense.
and they're not exactly the same. And so, when I was growing up, I remember there was a church, and my friend and I used to camp on this hill above the church, and on certain nights they would have these voodoo ceremonies. And of course, we were too scared to go down and actually watch, but we could listen to them, and it was kind of crazy. But I'm not making this up. This is true.
I believe you.
We believe you.
What's the difference between witchcraft and voodoo? I mean, they seem like they're about the same.
Well, they're really not. Witchcraft, I think, is it's. I mean, I don't think it's a religion. Well, maybe it is, but
Well, there's Wiccan. That's a religion.
Wiccan, yeah, and many of these religions they draw similarities to other religions, and maybe there are some similarities, but voodoo, there's dark voodoo and there's light voodoo. So you can practice good magic and dark magic, and they're not always, the people, some of these voodoo practitioners from the back when, I mean, there were men, they call them Houngans, Houngan, and the females were Mambos.
Mambos.
And I mean, some of them, they practice good. I mean, the most famous voodoo practitioner, of course, is Marie Laveau. And
woman.
What did you say, Shawn?
She's a good woman.
She's a good woman.
Yep.
You're creeping me out tonight. So they're totally they're similar, but they're different. And what is but the saying that voodoo only works if the person that's putting the voodoo on, like, say I have a voodoo doll, okay, and I poke it with it to someone I don't like, and she doesn't believe in voodoo. Now, a lot of people say it won't work because she doesn't believe in it. Did you ever hear that?
Well, kind of. I mean, it's way more complicated than that. I mean, like the god of voodoo is the Bondu, and even the highest practitioner of voodoo has no idea who that is.
Oh.
And they have certain deities that, like Baron Samedi, who is the deity that that keeps the cemeteries, and it's I mean, they have a similarity with certain Catholic saints, and so there is a strange connection between Catholicism and voodoo. And I mean, all this is real. This isn't made up.
I believe you. Shawn, what do you think about that?
I totally believe them. It's just like it's interesting. Now, what they portray in movies and in TV shows and stuff like that, I think they overdo it again. And that's, to me, puts the fear of voodoo into a lot of people, because they see this stuff on TV, but they don't actually know what the religion is. Trust me, I'm spiritual, but when I start seeing all that stuff, I'll be honest with you, it gave me the chills there and there, but I'm sure it's not what it's like built on TV. Is that true, Eric?
Well, it is true, and one of the most frightening books I ever read was The Exorcist.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God!
That is horrifying.
I read that, and I was so frightened. I mean, it was just horrible, and I was on a job in southwest Kansas, and the wind was blowing, and the sand was blowing to the door of the motel, and all I could see was this devil coming through the door at me. And I mean, I'm using that figuratively. I didn't really see a devil, but it frightened the heck out of me.
It would frighten me too. Especially, I don't think I could read that book at this stage in my life. It seems like the older I get, the more scared I get of these things. I used to be able to watch all of them when I was younger, and now I get too scared, and then I don't want to go to bed at night, and I'm up all night. So it's freaking me out, even talking about The Exorcist. But so let's talk about your series, The French Quarter Mysteries. Is that about real life events or people you know?
Well, I think all fiction is based on reality, and a lot of times when I draw a character, I use someone that I know, but not necessarily. I mean, but their characteristics and their physical mannerisms, but no, I don't necessarily use a particular person. But it's not. I mean, I know the French Quarter very well, and New Orleans. I mean, most people don't realize, but there's like 10 different accents in New Orleans.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, my first wife, Gail, was from Chalmette, and people thought she was from Brooklyn because she would say sink, she would say zinc, but. And, there's like a Metairie accent and a Gretna accent and French Quarter accent. And it's kind of strange. You see some of these shows like CSI New Orleans, and these people are probably all from Hollywood and wouldn't know a New Orleans accent if it hit them in the face.
Yeah.
But so it's and I try to use real landmarks, like the St. Louis Cathedral, and in my book about vampires, I had the old Ursuline convent, and so I use these, and a lot of my fans or people that like my books are from New Orleans or from that area, and they say they like them because it makes them feel like they're really there.
Absolutely, I think that's awesome. Your vampires in your book. So you're an author, and we know it's fiction. We understand that the vampires in your book are fiction. Is there any truth to the legends and myth? I mean, come on. I mean, there's these cult following groups. They believe they're vampires and they actually exist. I saw one on Facebook. There was like, oh my God, there was like 50,000 people that think they're vampires. So any truth to that, Eric? Can you tell us something that we might not know?
Well, you're absolutely right. There are people that do practice being vampires, and there is a bar in the French Quarter called the Dungeon.
The Dungeon.
And they have a first floor and a second floor, and the first floor is noisy, and you go upstairs, and the people, you know, they call themselves vampires, and they do exchange blood. You know, they will. Oh yeah, it's pretty creepy. I mean, I'm not a
Have you ever been there, Eric? You want to tell us about it?
Well, no, but you know, a lot of my friends have, and and you're not supposed to take a camera inside. I mean, it's not allowed, but it goes down an old alleyway, and you know, it's very creepy. And if you go to New Orleans and to the French Quarter, you need to go to the Dungeon.
You have to go if you go to. Is that something like that was on True Blood, Eric? There was the character Eric. That's weird. He had a bar, and it was the Fangbanger bar. I'm sure there's a lot of out there True Blood people. I even watched the reruns of it, and they go to, what is that town called? Chef. Come on, help me. I'm not from New Orleans. It begins with an S. Port Chev. Come on, you're.
I don't know.
Chevenport. I don't know how to pronounce it. Oh my goodness, I feel terrible.
How do you spell it? I can.
It begins with an S. Oh man. Shreveport. Oh my God. I knew that too because I watched it. I read Sookie's books, or Charlene. I call her Sookie. Charlene Harris's books. Yeah. Why can't I remember names like that? Yeah. I mean, he had a vampire bar, but it's. I hope it's not like that. I mean, it was really bizarre. I mean, it was like all kind of weird stuff going on and sex orgies and all kind of creepy stuff.
They have mirrors in that bar.
What's that?
I wonder if they have mirrors in that bar.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah, so it's called the Dungeon, huh?
Right.
Shawn, go ahead. I'm sorry I stepped on you.
Oh, that's okay. You can step on me anytime you want.
Mine hurts.
So, Eric, what actually got you into writing?
Well, it's a long story. I'm a geologist by trade, and in the 80s I had an oil company, and I don't know if you're probably not familiar with the 80s oil bust, but with the Penn Square debacle, Penn Square Bank, and my little company went belly up, and I was just incensed, you know, because I didn't feel like I was quite young and I had no fault, if you, at least in my own mind, and so, you know, at the time I had it was like a IBM AT, it was 2600 or something, I don't know, one of the first laptops, and I wrote a book, you know, and I didn't want, because I knew everybody here in Oklahoma and all the oil people, and you know, who had done what to who, and I couldn't really name names, so I fictionalized it and put it in a box somewhere. I don't even know where it's at, and it's never seen the light of day. However, I realized that I love to write, and so I started attending writers' conferences. I even went to a romance writers' conference here in Oklahoma City, and that was crazy, and met a lot of writers, and so I started writing, and you know, writing is like a craft. It's not really an art, and the more you write, the better you get, and you know, I'm just addicted to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear it. What influenced you to write about, you know, New Orleans? Like, is it just because of the mystique of it and the mystery that goes with it?
Well, it's a lot of novels take place in New York City and or Los Angeles, and really, I wrote a book here in Oklahoma, and you know, most people think there's nothing here but cows and horses and, you know, maybe football, and which isn't true, but the perception is there. And in New Orleans, of course, it's like you say, the mystique, the mystery, the haunted mansions, the narrow streets, the culture, the French and Spanish history, and I mean, there's just so much there, and I knew so much about it, you know, growing up around it and living there for quite a while, that I just I started writing short stories, and
well, let's hear some of the stories that you like your grandma told you, your aunt, that made you get, you know, interested in writing about them.
Well, when I was growing up, I mean, I'm an older person, and my grandparents' house had no air conditioning, and in Louisiana in the summertime it's really hot, and so they had lawn furniture out back and a big pecan tree, and after you know, we would eat, we would sit outside, and sometimes every now and then there would be a slight breeze, and we'd drink iced tea, and my grandmother would, who grew up in Mississippi, would tell ghost stories.
Yeah, let's hear some of those ghost stories that your grandma told.
Well, you know, I can't remember every one of them, and I'm like you. A lot of them would, and it would be dark, and they would be frightening and scary, and, you know, bloody bones, stuff like that, and I'm not sure, you know, but she did tell one that she swears up and down that you know, she'd been at a friend's house and then went back home, you know, after dark, which was kind of, her father was, you know, not too happy about it, so she snuck in, and when she did, she saw a ghost, and it scared the daylights out of her. And you know, the story's not much more than that, but you know, she and I believe her, because, you know, I've seen a ghost here in my house. It's just, you know, it's if you're,
tell us about your ghosts. Yeah.
Well, if you lock your mind down, you know, and you say, well, there's no such thing, then you're gonna not see a lot of stuff that's there right in front of your eyes. But one night I was going into the kitchen to, you know, raid the refrigerator, and I saw a shadow, and there was, you know, kind of a night light on in the kitchen, and it was a woman, and it was she had a, if you could imagine, she had like an old hat with a black veil, and a dress that came down to, you know, to the floor, that was black, and I couldn't see her face, but and I looked, and then it was more, I mean, you know, you see something, and then you question yourself. You say, well, I didn't really see that. But, you know, sometimes you really did, and I did. And, you know, she turned around and went back in the kitchen, and when I went there, there was no one there.
Oh, Shawn, what do you think about that?
There's another Lady in Black. I know when the movie Lady in Black came out, all right, the next day I had close to 30 emails of people telling me that they saw the Lady in Black. You know, like they have to talk about the top hat man that they see all the time. There was a thing out with the lady in the long black dress and the black veil.
No,
yeah.
Is this all the same people, or are there different women?
Oh, the same.
I don't know.
They're the same person? You guys think the same person? Yes. No, who is the Lady in Black? What's her back?
I don't have a clue. I mean, I don't know. All I know is I saw her.
That would be a good story to write about, dude.
Yeah. Like, what's her biography? What's she like? Why is she in black? Is she mourning the loss of a loved one, a husband?
Well, you know, my business partner, he and his wife lived in New Orleans, and they were living on the second floor of this one old building in the French Quarter, and they heard something, and like the ghost of 3 slaves came through the wall.
Oh my goodness.
and they had chains.
Oh.
And I mean, Ray, my partner, he thought he was dreaming, and he turned, and his wife Kelly was looking at the same thing, and then the ghost disappeared, and he said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "Yes."
Oh my goodness!
And so they both saw it at the same time, and you know, they were. I mean, he wasn't making it. He's a lawyer, so he wasn't making this up. I mean, it happened.
Wow, it was in like physical form. It wasn't just like a ghostly mist. It was actual physical.
Well, I mean, it was like a ghostly mist, but he could see that you know that they weren't human, but that they were ghosts.
And this was where?
In New Orleans.
You know, well, I can see that happening. I mean, they were treated so badly. The slaves were treated so badly, and if they're anything like the ones that were tortured in that one house that you were talking about, I can see that. I mean, they're not at rest. They were had a miserable existence. So I can see that.
Right.
Shawn?
Yes.
What do you say about that?
It isn't right. Totally depressing upon that. And,
I mean, wouldn't that be reason enough for them to be haunting people in New Orleans? I mean, some of these houses are so old, they have to be there.
Some of those hauntings, they're reconstruct. I keep forgetting that word, but what it is that they're stuck, say like 1865, okay, and they just keep repeating.
It's a residual haunting, haunting that keeps going on. Yeah, I mean, these mansions and these properties, they were lucky they have as many as they did. I know the Civil War destroyed most of them. I'm so glad that there are some that are left. So they have to be haunted. I mean, we're talking 100-year-old houses, even 200, 300-year-old mansions that are still there. There has to be so much spirit there, so much residual energy that just goes through the halls, that one after the other, because you figure how many people lived in those homes. Yeah.
I have to tell you this strange story. The last book I wrote in the series was New Orleans Dangerous, and the reason I wrote it, and in fact I wrote it like in 2 months, it didn't take long, but this woman who had visited New Orleans with her daughter had direct messaged me on Twitter, and she asked me if I knew anything about a silver chalice in an altar in a closet in the old Ursuline convent. And I said no. And so anyway, she sent me pictures, and her daughter was like 18 years old, and was looking around maybe where she wasn't supposed to. And in the first floor of the old Ursuline convent, it's a self-guiding tour. And so she goes in there, and it's like the size of a closet, but there is an altar and a silver chalice with a white rose with no water in the chalice. And on the chalice, it was engraved with blood of hogs.
Oh.
And so I Googled that, and I found a reference to like a 14th century pope. And back in the 14th century, there was, Catholicism, I guess, was just beginning at the time, and they believed as much in the devil as they believed in God.
That's the truth.
Oh, goodness.
I read that.
And but anyway, the more I researched it, I found that Louis XIV, who was a Sun King from, of course, from France, who built the biggest, most majestic residence on Earth, and he actually was heavy into finding out about immortality, because naturally he was powerful and he was rich and he wanted to live forever. And the story goes that he imported a vampire from Bavaria, and that because he was searching, finding the secret for immortality. And this is even crazier than this. I mean, they had these cryptology machines. He was so secretive that he encrypted everything. It wasn't until World War II that they broke some of this code. But back to the story, that actually he had a grandson that supposedly died when he was like 28 years old. But in fact, he may have been injected with some of the blood from one of these vampires and became the first French vampire.
Oh, wow.
And then couldn't stay in France, and so they shipped him off to the New World, to New Orleans.
Wow.
And, a lot of this, I mean, I fictionalized it, but a lot of it is just so creepy that, I mean, it just, when you do the research and you start, peeling the layers away from the mystery, I mean, it'll just blow your mind.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Shawn?
That's crazy stuff, man. Maybe I should go buy a vampire, huh, and live forever. That would be good.
Well,
I wouldn't want to live forever.
Now, the vampires aren't alive; they're the living dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the problem. You don't live forever. In fact, you're dead.
Oh yeah.
Well, you're dead. But they think but they're alive, but they're not. They're dead, but they're living and they talk. So
Right.
Isn't that there's so many vampire stories, like the origin of the vampire. Some say that when Christ he got speared on the cross, that the blood drained down and into the I guess it was a chalice was sitting there, and I guess someone drank the blood, or he was a soldier, and they believed that it would give them eternal youth. I don't know if you knew that story behind that one, why vampires.
Well, I've heard that. In fact, when I was younger, there was a whole series about this particular Roman soldier that lived forever.
Yes,
and
the Roman soldier.
I read it so long ago I can't remember, but I read every one of them.
Yeah, I believe that possibly could happen. Or I know there's a story behind the Hudson Bay Company that the French, I believe it was in Louisiana. I think they actually made a series on the Discovery Channel about it, and there was some strange, like when you were talking about the altar and about the blood, there's a character in it that he has an altar just like that, and it's on the Hudson Bay story. I can't remember the name of the series that they just came out with. It was just probably about 3 or 4 months ago that it was on, but it was about the Henry Hudson, the Bay Company, and they did weird stuff like that with altars, and they were French, and it was like the French district. It might even have been like a what do you call them? Oh, not. Come on, Shawn, help me out. They're not. They're called little town.
Satanist?
What's that?
Satanist?
No, yeah. Well, they are Satanists, but each what the little municipal towns are called? Parish. Yes, the parish. See, we're not from New Orleans, so it's real new to us. So even though we're on a New Orleans radio station, we're not from there, but this parish, there was a lot of people that practiced Satanism and voodoo. It looked like it could be voodoo because he took the hair. One of the characters took the hair from someone and they brought it up to the altar. So it must be something in that, just a culture that believes in that stuff. So it has to be. And vampires, I don't know. They've been around, there's a lot of talk that Transylvania was real. And I mean, it is a real place, but there was a lot of vampires there because they were so evil and they did so many horrible things. So, I can't.
Well, not to change the subject, but I wrote another book called Primal Creatures.
Ooh.
And it's about werewolves, but in New Orleans, not in New Orleans, but in southern Louisiana, they call them rougarous.
I heard that.
Rougarous, yeah, I've heard that too.
Yes, yes.
You know, in the French, I think it's loup-garou, but you know the Cajuns call it rougarou, and I on my my Facebook fan page, someone was saying there's no such thing, About 20 minutes later, somebody posted a picture with one in the bushes.
Oh my goodness! So they do exist, but that's the same thing as a werewolf, but they're just a different name for them. Is that right?
Right.
Oh wow.
I don't know. I think that I don't. Now, do you think that there are werewolves at 12 midnight on a full moon that a man turns into a werewolf? Or do you think it's just a psychological thing that some people go crazy when there's a full moon and the normal person ends up acting a little wild?
I believe it is psychologically.
Yeah, I think that.
I would say so, but I don't see them turning into wolves per se, but I see them act like werewolves.
No, I believe that because I was born on a full moon, and the moon, I know exactly when the moon's coming. I know when it's going to be a full moon. I'll have these crazy outbursts of crying, mood swings when there's a full moon, and when it goes to, it starts to pass, and it's not a full moon anymore. I start to feel better, like 2 or 3 days after that. But leading a day or two up to the full moon, really, sometimes I think, oh my God, this woman is nuts. She's crazy, because it does affect me, just like it affects the ocean and women's cycles. And it controls, the moon controls a lot. So I think werewolves, I do believe the mental is wild. They become wild. They act out. But I don't believe they grow a tail and fangs. No, you guys, what do you think?
I think that if you ask them, I bet you they'll tell you they do, even though they don't.
You mean people, or do you think there are people that actually turn into a werewolf with fangs?
No. People who do, psychologically turn into a werewolf.
Oh, yeah, I think they do. Well, you actually think they believe they're werewolves?
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. But again, that comes down to my theory. If it helps you out in some certain way to make your life better, then do it.
I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
Well, you've heard of the disease rabies.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's totally different, though, isn't it? That's
well, no, it's not. If a mad dog bites another dog, the dog, will go mad. And if a dog mad, before, back in the Dark Ages, there was no cure for rabies. I guess Louis Pasteur, and they would humans would foam at the mouth, and if they would attack you, and if they bit you, you would get it.
Okay, can I?
So there is a certain. I'm not saying they were werewolves, but they certainly acted like animals, and they did attack people.
Okay, I can see where that can happen back in the early days of America or anywhere else, Canada or anywhere else, that if they did get bit by it, and they could see that person would run around foaming at the mouth. Yeah, I can see that. But
it would be transmitted. I mean, they would transmit the disease to you, just like all these folk tales have a basis in fact.
Yeah, but they don't grow hair.
Well, we don't know. I mean, how many of us have ever seen?
I don't know. I've never seen a werewolf before. I'm going to be looking for one next full moon. I'll tell you that. What about you, Shawn?
Yeah. Nah, you can do it for me.
Nah, okay. Thanks. So you do have a whole series on werewolves?
No, just one book. I try to. I do paranormal and ghosts and the one I'm working on right now is the Green Fairy. The Absinthe Green Fairy, which is.
I love fairies.
Really creepy. Maybe the creepiest book I've ever written.
Well, what's it called again?
Well, the name of the book is going to be, I haven't written it yet. It's called, the one I'm working on is Craters of the Moon. And hopefully I'll have it out by the end of the year. But
well, the one about the fairies, the green. Oh.
Well, you know, absinthe is was a when they had a plague in France and all the vines were destroyed. Absinthe became the national drink, and they drank I can't tell you how many millions of gallons, and it's supposedly, you know, it's botanicals. It's made up of fennel, wormwood, and I can't remember the other off the top of my head, but supposedly it's hallucinogenic. And you know, I can't remember the exact quote, but you know, Ernest Hemingway was a fan, and Edgar Allan Poe, and all the artists, and Degas, and so on, and you know, just in 2006, it was illegal in the United States until 2007. But you know, you can drink it now. And if you go to New Orleans, you ought to try it. It has a anise, I guess that's how you pronounce it, which tastes like licorice, and it's very highly alcoholic. And you know, I could see how people might think that they were hallucinating.
Yeah, I definitely could see that happening. Any kind of poison mushrooms, anything like that back then, if you ate them and you started seeing things, and if you're outside and maybe you ate some poison mushrooms too, and you see this dog-like creature, and you might think, you know, you saw a werewolf too. So you never know. Shawn?
Chupacabra.
It's witching hour, buddy.
I know, it's getting to the witching hour. Okay. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for coming on.
Where can someone
thanks so much for asking me.
Absolutely. Where can someone find your books?
Well, they can find them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, online. And, you know, I'm an indie author, so they're not widely available in most libraries, but they are available. And like I say, I've written 8 French Quarter mysteries.
Cool.
Well, we'll be definitely looking for them.
Yeah, so thank you again for joining us this evening, Eric. Shawn, tell our audience where we can get in contact with you if they want to get a paranormal investigation.
If they want a paranormal investigation, just go on to our Facebook page at Pittsburgh Paranormal Society on Facebook.
And I welcome everyone to continue the conversation and join us Friday night live on Pittsburgh Paranormal Chasing Prophecies Facebook page, 9 Eastern. So please check out my author page, J.E. Nicassio, my trilogy From the Sky, and all my books on Amazon. And next week is Everything Paranormal Open Mic Thursday, so hope you can join us. And remember to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and check out and subscribe to ChasingProphecyRadio.com and our YouTube channel. Stay safe. Good night, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Chasing Prophecy.